I am tougher on snowshoes than anyone I have ever met. And you would think that after going through the fiasco of blowing apart 2 pairs of MSR Lightning Ascents, you're probably asking yourself right now, wait a minute, I thought Jay was snowshoeing up to the top of the mountain. Why do I see his snowmobile in the back of the frame? Well, we got halfway up the mountain. Oh God. And this happened. Oh, son of a bitch. On 2 different goat hunts, and finding two seasons ago these Atlas Montanes to be damn near bomb-proof, I just would have given up and stuck with them. However, I have a duty, not only to myself, but to you guys, to continue testing gear. So this year, I picked up a pair of the Atlas Mountain Range 35 inches. Now, quick update, Studio has gotten an upgrade. So if you look right up here, we now have a beautiful high def overhead view where we can compare products and not get complaints about things being out of focus and all of the rest of it. So thank you for people who've provided constructive feedback on the channel. My goal coming into 2025 is to absolutely crush the technical review space on YouTube. So I'm going to do everything I can to keep these reviews as reliable, trustworthy, unsponsored, non-biased, and highly analytical as I can, while upping the production game while we do it. Quick little recap. As I mentioned, if you are interested in watching my original MSR Lightning versus Atlas Montane snowshoe review, you can do that right here. And if you don't, here's a quick little sneak peek of what I was able to do to a pair of MSR Lightning Ascents. So it is no wonder that I do not like these snowshoes. As I mentioned before, I ran these Atlas Montanes 2 years ago and absolutely loved them. Now they're not perfect. So when I saw the Atlas Mountain Ranges, the Mountain Range 35s, they had a couple different features that kind of addressed some issues that I had with the Montanes, so I wanted to run them. Now, it wasn't perfect, but I've got some really good feedback, and I did a complete score on both of these, and we're going to jump into that in a moment. Now, I just got back from up north. Unfortunately, it was more of a gear testing session than a goat hunting session. The weather was terrible. There was 0 goat sign. I originally thought it was my only opportunity to get up north, so I knew the kind of odds were stacked against me, but I thought, what the hell? I'm going to make a run at it anyways. And on my way up there, my plans kind of got changed on me for February, so I had a week open up where I could potentially go back up. So after I got in there and things just weren't going my way, I had an opportunity to test some great gear. I got into some new country. I was able to make a game plan for later in the season. So I thought to myself, all right, I'm just going to pull out, go home, regroup, and I'm going to come back in when the conditions are more favorable. I'm going to drop an entire podcast on, why certain conditions are less favorable during certain times of the year than others. First, let's do a brief overview of each of these snowshoes and what makes them different from each other. So we'll start with the Atlas Montane here. So it's got the reactive tubular frame. Now the cool part is that in the high stress locations near your binding and your heel, the tubular frame takes on an elliptical shape, what actually gives it more vertical strength than the traditional circular tubular frame that you've seen down here. Now, this is the older style Montane that has this kind of like strap binding system. New for 2024, they have a different binding system. So I'll give you my thoughts on this one, but recognize it's not the newer one. And traditionally, it's got the 19-degree heel lift, which is pretty significant. I rarely use the heel lift, primarily because I usually have a pack on my back and I can't reach behind me and actually flick that thing up. Now we move on to the Mountain Range. So this is Atlas's premium offering. It's quite a bit more expensive than the Montane. Now it has a boa fit binding system, and this is the first time I've kind of used that, but more to come on the boa fit binding system. And then it has the reactive track, which is kind of frame system, which is really one of the things that sets this snowshoe apart, is the amount of traction you can get from this system. But the two snowshoes are almost identical shape and size, same volume, same snow coverage, same angles, slightly bit more toe angle on the Atlas than the Mountain Range. But other than that, in shape and snow displacement, they are almost identical. As always, we're using a forced ranking scoring system. So we looked at price, weight, materials, binding, traction, flotation, durability, and feature set. The snowshoe that was the best in each category gets a 1, and the second place gets a 2. At the end of the scoring system, the snowshoe with the lowest score wins. I've gone over why I do that, but it's so that those scores are compatible moving forward to other reviews that I do, so that if I do a snowshoe review with 6 pairs of snowshoes instead of 2 pairs of snowshoes, the score of the 2 first place pairs will still be comparable. Now, before we get into the actual review, I want to take a quick break and talk about hunting. So it's now January 2025. For most of the world, hunting season is officially over. You got a little bit of stuff going down in Texas. You got a little bit of winter stuff going on in BC. But for most of us, it's done, which means it's time to start planning for spring bear. Now, I still have a few spots left available for spring bear in 2025. So if you are interested in an any weapon spring bear hunt in British Columbia, let me know. Shoot me an email, j@mindfulhunter.com. We can really tailor this hunt to fit what you're looking for. If you want to spend more time in the backcountry, we can do that. If you want to sit in a wall tent and cruise deactivated logging roads, looking for bears that way, we can do that too. There's all kinds of options. There's a really good density of coastal black bears in this area. That's another highlight of my area. As far as SCI scoring goes, I fall within the coastal black bear kind of contained area, which is really just the mountain range I'm on, and then kind of coastal BC with Vancouver Island and the Sunshine Coast and all the rest of that. So still openings for 2025. If you want to come up to Canada and chase some bears, j@mindfulhunter.com. All right, let's dive right into price. The Montanes come in at $280 USD, and the Mountain Ranges are $50 more expensive at $330. Now, when it comes to weight, it actually might be a bit of a surprise. The Atlas Montanes weigh 2.5 pounds per snowshoe, and that's for the 35-inch model. And the Atlas Mountain Ranges weigh 2.8 pounds per snowshoe. So that's a 0.3 pound difference, or about 5 ounces. And I was kind of surprised, because you would think that with the thinner frame material of the Mountain Range, these would actually weigh less. So I don't know if that is a function of the binding system. Also, it's a hard mounted binding system in the Mountain Ranges with these extra bits of metal here. And the Montanes have this more traditional strap system. And so I think they're able to shave a little bit of weight with that connective material there. Now, if we moved on to materials, basically identical. We have aluminum frames with Nitex decking. So we got a tie in that category. Now, I just touched on the bindings, but let's dig into this a little bit more deeper. So the Montanes have a much more traditional binding system. And again, this is updated for 2024, so this is a little bit out of date. It is an okay binding system. The one thing that I like is that you can pivot the angle on the back of the binding on both sides. So you notice here on the inner part, you can angle this, and sometimes that's nice because you want to get this heel strap up and over the round part of the heel on the back of your boot. So you can rotate it here, and then you can also rotate it here. This material is quite nice and strong, and it's a little bit stretchy, so you can get it nice and snug when you reef it down. And then, again, I'd say that this particular style is like satisfactory. The nice part about it is you can tighten it up by just pulling one strap. So this one big long strap feeds through these two kind of ratcheting buckles here. You pull the one strap, tightens down on your boot. You pull this other thin black strap and it lets it off. The drawback is it doesn't have the most stability in the world because of this strap system here. It's not hard mounted to the snowshoe. And that's where the mountain range comes into play. So you have these two additional kind of metal cleats here, and then the binding is riveted directly to that, and you have about, I don't know, basically 90 degrees of rotation. If you notice there's this stopper here, you can rotate a full 90 degrees within there, and there's definitely a greater level of stability of this binding because it's locked right into the snowshoe itself. You also don't get any twisting of the binding itself, whereas the Montane, because it's only strapped, you will find your boot tends to twist in that binding. And then what happens is as you walk, the snowshoes can go on a bit of an angle, and you tend to start walking on either the front or the back of your snowshoe, and you can kind of get tripped up. I found that the mountain ranges had less of a tendency to do that. Now, one note, strap bindings, in my opinion, tend to be more field serviceable, because if anything breaks on those, you can likely just put some cord through the same buckles that are already there and field service it to get you back out to the truck. I don't know if I have the same faith in the BOA bindings. Like, I think you could do an emergency repair. I think you could probably just like duct tape the hell out of this thing and at least just use this rear strap to keep that forward pressure on your boot. And I think you would get back out. But I do think the Atlas Montanes are likely more field serviceable. But as I mentioned, being able to rotate both sides of the binding on the Montanes, you cannot do that with the mountain ranges. You'll notice this one side doesn't go up at all. So you're kind of limited in the rear strap placement about how far down you can go in your boot. I was kind of muscling it up at first to get up and over that heel cup, but I didn't like the pressure and the weird angle it was putting on this strap, so I stopped doing that. And I actually did found it caught decently on the rear heel welt of my boot, so I just ran the strap in kind of its lower location for the remainder of the hunt. But I am going to give the nod to the mountain range BOA fit system, because I will say really smooth. You put your boot in there, you give this a little bit of a tug to kind of square it up, and then what I would do is I would crank down the rear strap to suck my boot in as tight as possible. Then I would just click this BOA strap down, give it 2 or 3 twists until it was tight. Like, there's no need to really crank it down, and I got great fitment with my boot every time. And I'm assuming this cable is pretty tough. It worries me when I look at it, but I'm assuming it's of some pretty high grade material. I didn't have any issues with it when I went out, and I beat the hell out of these things for quite a few days. All right, moving on to traction, pretty cut and dry. Really, the only traction you have on the Montanes are the crampons underneath the ball of your foot here, and then these kind of shallower ones here, which, to be honest, don't really stick out that much further than the side of the frame. So unfortunately, if you're floating on the frame, you only get about a 1/4 inch penetration with these crampons here. You get a little bit more with these ones up here. But traction was always one of my issues with the Montanes. And these mountain ranges are just have mind-blowing traction. It is just phenomenal. You can walk down super steep stuff, up super steep stuff. These traction rails here dig right in. Really impressed. I did think they could have more of a cleat here, and I'm going to get into it further, but I think they should add a second reinforcement here, but I'll get into that in a later section. No contest. The traction of the mountain ranges blew the Montanes out of the water. Flotation, completely identical. As I mentioned at the beginning of the review, same shape, same snow displacement, so there was zero difference in the flotation capabilities of either of the snowshoes. Now, durability. There was a pretty significant difference. So I ran the Montanes for probably 15 days in total in super hardcore, backcountry goat hunting conditions, and I did not have a single failure on the snowshoe, which says a lot. Now, I ran these mountain ranges for 4 days in total. I had 1 day preseason of testing, and then I had the 3 days that I went in for my kind of quasi goat hunt. Now, I do weigh, on this hunt, I was 238 pounds, and I had a 70-pound pack. So that puts me at just about 310 pounds all said and done. So I recognize, now I'm within the weight ratings of both of these snowshoes, but I'm kind of at the upper limit of those weight ratings. So it does not surprise me when I break snowshoes. Now, overall, they stood up fairly well. But one of the weaknesses of the mountain range is actually this rear portion here. So I'm gonna bring in the other snowshoe as an example. So this is the right foot. The other one was the left foot. So move these to the side here. Now, if we look at this piece, so the metal in this snowshoe does not run all the way around the bottom. And this piece of hard plastic here, basically the metal runs to here and here and is just connected by plastic. And it has another piece of reinforcement under here. Well, I snapped both of these reinforcements right in the corner here and here. And that's why I was saying earlier, I think there should be another reinforcement, like another cross member, similar to this cross member here. An additional piece of aluminum with a crampon kind of finish should come across here to give some stability to the tail. Because of the angular design of the mountain range compared to the tubular design of the Montane, there's more flex in the side rails of the frame. And that's why I think there needs to be another cross member back here, similar to this cross member here, to add more rigidity to the tail. So what happened was it cracked right here and right here. And it was on the first day. I actually woke up on the morning of the second day, went to start hiking to my glassing location, looked down, saw that it was broken, was like, oh yeah, here we go. Had to think about it for a minute. And funnily enough, I was wearing a knee brace at the time, and there was kind of like these rigid metal supports on the side of the knee brace, and one of them had come out of the knee brace the night before. And I remembered seeing that somewhere. So what I actually did was I took a section of the knee brace, this metal that you can see right here, and I broke it to be about this long. I then placed it along the crack, stabilized it with a couple pieces of electrical tape, and then also ran some additional kind of stabilizers around the side and also over on the side where it had cracked on the bottom. And then, quick pro tip, whatever you're carrying when you go into the backcountry, wrap some tape around it. If it's big stuff, wrap duct tape around it. If it's little stuff, wrap electrical tape around it. I've got a couple lighters. One has Leuco tape for blisters, one has duct tape, and one has electrical tape. And so I had a ton of electrical tape wrapped around a lighter, and that's what I used for this repair. So had the piece of metal in there for stabilizing, put a couple pieces of tape on there just to hold everything in place, and then just went buck wild with the electrical tape and kind of heated it up with a lighter at the end because it was cold and wet and it wasn't really sticking. And I gotta say, man, I pounded on these things for 2 straight days after that, and they didn't budge. So it's a bit of a knock that it fell apart in the first place, but then, you know, it's the fact that it was field serviceable and I was able to keep it together for the remainder of the hunt was a highlight. But I will say, overall, I would have to say that the durability of the Montanes exceeds the durability of the mountain ranges, just based on the fact that I wasn't able to break the Montanes and I was able to break the mountain ranges. Last category we're going to talk about is features. Now, listen, the Montane is a fairly typical tubular snowshoe. Not really that different from a set of tubs, other than the fact that I like the shape a little bit more and I think the build quality and the materials are a little bit better. But there's nothing really earth-shattering about the Montane. The new binding system I'm very interested in, so I might try and run that for next year. If you're looking for a feature-packed set of snowshoes, the mountain ranges are what you're after. The 2 main features are this traction rail frame system and the BOA Fit binding system. I think they're probably on the more innovative end of the spectrum when it comes to snowshoes. Before we get into the final rankings and kind of my thoughts and conclusions about which of these snowshoes might be best for you, given your particular style of adventuring or hunting, I want to talk about non-sponsored, unbiased gear reviews. If you appreciate reviews like this, where my only concern is delivering value to the user, I don't have to worry about brands. I'm not sponsored. I'm not financially incentivized in any way, shape, or form by any brand. If you enjoy that and you want to see more of it, I need your support. You do that by joining Mindful Reviews. And here's the deal. We're going to do another big giveaway. Between now and May 1st, if you join Mindful Reviews, you will be automatically entered to win a pair of Sig Sauer Zulu 10 15 power binoculars. These are valued at $1,700 USD. Really nice binoculars. Just did a review on them. And anyone who joins, you can join for as little as $5 a month. Anyone who joins will be automatically entered to win. There's a great platform that I've built from the ground up. There's member reviews. All my reviews are up there and cataloged for you. We have a fantastic forum with lots of user engagement and feedback. So again, if you want to see more non-sponsored, unbiased gear reviews, and you want to support me in creating those reviews, go over to mindful-reviews.com. Anyone who joins between now and May 1st will be automatically entered to win a pair of Sig Sauer Zulu 10 15 power binoculars. All right, so if we go back to the spreadsheet and look at the final score, the Montanes came in second place with a score of 12, and the mountain ranges came in first place with a score of 10. Now, this is kind of a difficult one for me to recommend because when I go into the backcountry, especially with something as mission critical as a pair of snowshoes, my ultimate priority, or the thing that is most important to me, is durability. If my snowshoes failed, I'm hooped. So you would think that I would be recommending the Montanes over the mountain ranges. I'm not going to, though. I think because the brake at the back was field serviceable, and to be honest with you, I was actually thinking I might reinforce this tail section myself before heading out next time, knowing that it's a weak point of the snowshoes. And I was very, very aggressive with these snowshoes, and nothing else on them broke. And I will say the improvement of the BOA Fit binding system and the additional traction of this reactive traction rail on the frame really did make a pretty significant difference in my ability to get around out in the field. So if you've got the extra cash, I strongly recommend buying the mountain ranges. I think they're well worth it, even with the slight failure here at the tail. As I mentioned, I think I'm operating at the upper range of what these snowshoes were meant for. So when I have little breaks like that, sometimes it's to be expected. But even with that happening, if you're going in hardcore and you want, the best snowshoe for what you're doing, as of right now, the mountain ranges are the best that I've tried. Now, if you're not in as steep a terrain, or you're not in as much hard pack where side traction is as important, I think the Montanes are a fantastic choice. I've run them multiple times. I've never had any bad luck, and I'm actually really excited to try out the new binding system. So there you have it. Take it with a grain of salt. What other snowshoes would you like to see me try next? What snowshoes have you tried? Drop a note in the comments section below. I would love to continue this conversation down there. Do me a favor, hit the like and subscribe buttons. YouTube does not do a great job of organically promoting hunting and backcountry based content with their algorithm, so that I could use all the support I could get. And as always, thank you for tuning in.